Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Discover New Music podcast from us at Pelt Music. Shortly, we'll be joined by Jarki Monno, who we recently featured over on our Discover New Music playlist on Spotify with his single Dead End Town. But before then, the usual reminders from myself. If you would, please do follow Pelt on social media. We're on Facebook at Pelt and on Twitter and Instagram at Pelt Music. And again, if you would, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, wherever you're watching or listening. Welcome to the Discover New Music podcast, Jarki Monno. Absolutely delighted to have you on this evening. How are you doing?
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm I'm grand. I'm nervous. I'm buzzing. Obviously, the EP comes out tomorrow, and by the time this is out, it'll probably be out in the world. Um, but yeah, a lot of emotions. It's been a long time coming, but I'm um I'm so gassed to just finally be at this point. It's been a real journey, but yeah, I can't wait for it, man.
Yeah, I can't even begin to imagine how you must feel. As you say, yeah, we are merely hours away from that EP coming out, and as
Absolutely.
listeners will listen to this, like you say, it will be out, and obviously, yeah, hopefully the listeners have already been able to hear it. If
Yeah.
not, obviously encourage them to do so. And as you say, it's been a long journey, so we really want to delve into that journey. And
Mhm.
we always feature at the start of this podcast what we call the origin story, which is a bit grandiose way of normally it's a band that I'm talking to, and it's like, oh, how did you guys come together? But I always laugh when I'm
Right.
talking to an individual because obviously, your origin story, I think we all
All of our
did.
all of our split personalities coming together.
Well, there's that absolutely, and ultimately, if we were to push it all the way back, we all did biology at school. I think we know where people come
Exactly.
from, so I don't think we need to delve that far back into the journey. But obviously, it's Discover New Music podcast. We hope that there's people that are going to be discovering new music from it, discovering yourself. So it's
Mm.
to give a bit of a flavour for people unfamiliar. So obviously, it is a great story from what I've read for yourself, Jarky. So what can you tell the listeners? What is your origin story?
So I guess this whole journey has kind of just sort of pathed itself. When I was, in all honesty, this career just sort of was just one step at a time. Each thing landed. I mean, I don't know if you can see behind me, but this is a picture on my wall. That was when I used to do. So it all started, I guess. I used to do like an amateur dramatics group every Saturday morning. I guess it was really like it was the first place where I could sort of show a side to myself. I mean, I used to hide it back then, but that sort of that love and passion for singing and that release, I'd never felt anything like it, especially. And I think it was very different, obviously, because it was musical theatre shows and it was stuff other people have written, but I'd never felt that like euphoria before. Um, but at the time I kind of hid away from letting people know about it because it was kind of my safe space, and I didn't want anybody to, I guess, to ruin that,
Yeah.
and to think differently, like to think differently of me, which they never would. But I think that's just that young mindset when you're young. If you're doing something different to what a lot of your mates are doing or others, sometimes unfortunately it can go one or two ways. And it was just a real something I'd never felt before. I guess it all started there, and we're probably talking when I was about 12 years old, um, and all the way through my school life, I was still kind of hiding this sense of my passion, but I didn't want to tell anybody. And then it comes probably the changing one of the real changing points was probably when I was in about year 11 at school. I thought one day I was just tired of hiding this thing that I loved, and I went down to my music department when I was at school, and I said to like the head of music, Miss Bailey at the time, um, I said I want to audition for the choir. Um, and she said, unfortunately, you're 2 weeks late. Like all the auditions have been done. And I was gutted because it was the first time I really put myself out there and in a outside of my comfort zone. And then thank God she turned around. I was walking out the room and she said, "But I tell you what, come back down at lunchtime and we'll just sit in a room and we'll see what you got." So these couple of periods went past and I was getting the clammy hands and the nervous jitters, and I walked down to the music department and I sat down and I sung in front of her, and she said, "Where have you been for the last 5 years?" And I think getting that reception from somebody that I guess at school you're always trying to prove that you're good at something, especially to the likes of those people, like when it comes to teachers that have been doing in that field and doing that craft for ample years. And it was just that I think it's the first real pivotal point, I think, into what has led me up to now. It was the first cog in the works to really be like, okay, I've come out of my comfort zone and it's been received like this. So I done the choir. They set up like an acoustic band for me, and unfortunately, year 11 came to an end. And I was like, right, what do I do now? My passion's music. I'm not good at anything else. There's nothing else in this world that I'm really good at but talking to people and having a good tinwag. Um, and I remember going to like the A level results evening, the A level like options evening, and I went straight up to the music desk, and Miss Bailey was fronting the A level music, and she just said to me and my mum, she was like, "You'll be wasted here. We don't accommodate what Jark is great at. Like his biggest and best attribute is the performance side. Forget about all the theory and learning about sort of old composers from 1700s or whatnot." um and she said she pointed me in the direction of a course which I went and done, and thank the Lord I went and done that and met an incredible woman called Rachel Thomas, who was like the course leader for vocals there. And she just sort of guided me the whole way through. College came to an end, and again I was in a similar position. I was like, right, what now? Like I've done really well here at college, and I remember it so vividly. I was standing on the train platform with my mate at the time, who was like a producer. Well, I say at the time, I'm still best mates with him. And I was there. It was our last day of college, and I turned to Andy and I was like, I don't know what to do next. And he said, well, I went down and visited this university. I think you should go down and check it out. It wasn't for me, but I think it's right up your street. So literally, I think it was like a week later, I went down. It was in Brighton, and I just found myself there. And I think kind of the rest is history. I met an incredible bunch of people down there. A lot of one of the biggest things that has helped me get to this point is collaboration, just sort of throwing myself into any sessions, meeting the right people, understanding who you work well with, and just running with it from there. um and I've been very blessed to yeah, like I say, meet the right people, and each person has helped me get to this step and to this phase where I'm about to release an EP via a label, which if you'd have told that 16-year-old lad that went to audition at the choir, if you'd have said in 8 years' time you'll be releasing something with a label, he'd be dumbfounded. He'd laugh at me. So it's a real in hindsight, it's a real heartwarming journey so far, and I hope that there's many more moments like this to come down the line, man.
Oh, there absolutely will be. I'm sure of it, and it is such a heartwarming journey. And
Mm.
it's such a shame that there's so many you know talented individuals out there, and so many people that can do so much more. And like you say, you get stuck in your head, and there's a fear to kind of share, you know, what you want to do with a
Mm.
wider sort of audience, because there's a fear of rejection, isn't there? And obviously, you know,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I think
the
that I think that is the scariest part about it
yeah.
is we always I can't speak on behalf of everybody, but I think a massive thing is we always think what will others think, instead of we put that above how much we love it ourselves as artists or bands. And it is one of the biggest sort of things that can stop people from doing what they love. And it's such a shame. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still go through
Yeah.
peaks and troughs of some days being like, yeah, I'm gonna be smashing every single festival in X amount of years down the line, and then a week later it could be the biggest amount of imposter syndrome where I'm like, I think somebody else deserves this more than me. Like, what am I doing? And such a helter skelter lifestyle. Um, but you just got to take the highs with the lows, and vice versa.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. As someone myself that identify with that imposter syndrome so much, both in obviously what I do with Full Pelt Music and in my
Mm.
day job, as well. It's so easy just to get sort of blocked in your own head and obviously
Yeah.
stop yourself. And as you touched on, I think it's so important meeting the right people along the way.
Mm.
And you touched on a few there. Obviously, Miss Bailey, you
Yeah.
know a teacher like that that's willing to go, you know what, oh yeah, you have missed the deadline, but come back and give you that opportunity, probably out of her own time to she's seen
Yeah.
something in you. And obviously is willing to do that. And obviously, as I say, Rachel,
Yeah.
the sort of college, and obviously the people you've collaborated with, and they've all pushed you that little step further. And it's so important to meet these people and have them out there, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean that is two of a pool of people
Yeah.
that I could list for hours and hours on it. I mean, there's this almost like that Lenny Henry acceptance speech where he just rattles off like everyone is like almost everyone he's ever known. It's literally like that. But I mean they know who they are, and I'm a big believer in giving people their flowers when they're due, man, because I think we can sometimes get so caught up in our own head and our own journey that when we put ourselves out there just that little bit more to let other people know how well they're doing, how much it helps them, but it can help yourself as well. And really, if you, I'm a massive believer in you put good out and good will come back to you. So. It's one thing, especially this year. I've tried to do a lot more, because like we say, it's so easy to just get caught up in it all, that if you take a step back and realize how far you've come, as well as this community around ourselves, it's quite mind-boggling.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I love your story, Jackie. I really, really do, and it feeds into the next question, which is always about the sort of first single of yours that we've featured over on the playlist. And
Yeah,
for
thank you for
yourself,
that.
it was Dead End Town.
Mm,
So obviously, it's quite an autobiographical sort of song as it is, and obviously touching
yeah.
on a lot of the themes we just talked about. But we always do ask, how did that song sort of come together for you? What are the sort of overriding themes behind it?
So this song was actually, I think, especially when it comes to the EP, this was such like a pivotal moment. So I wrote this, I mean, even pre when I'd worked with Marshall, like this was, so I wrote this at the back end of 2021. Like I mentioned briefly earlier, I moved down to Brighton for 5 years, and I met a community of people that were all like myself. I was born and bred in for 18 years in a town where I was one of very few people that done what I do. So there was always, I guess, that level of couldn't quite connect with people on sort of chit chat level. It wasn't sort of a lot of sort of labourers or whatnot that can all have that little chin wag down at the pub. It was always, how's music going? And I'd be like, yeah, it's going really well, but they could never delve any deeper to it,
Yeah.
which there's nothing wrong with that. But when I moved to Brighton, I finally found just a whole network of people that I could talk so in depth with, and share this passion, and other people understood it, which I think was the difference, which was amazing. Um, so I was down there for 5 years, studied for 3 years, and then I worked in a warehouse for 2 years doing music on, I guess, on the side in my spare time. Um, and I think that was one of the toughest points, because I was working a full-time job, and coming back home and just having no drive, or I was so tired from a full day's graft at the warehouse that the last thing I could think about was doing music. And I sort of I was conscious of this thought for a good few months. I'd say probably from about April, May 2021, and the end of our tenancy was coming up at the flat we were staying in. And it got to probably about 2 weeks before the tenancy run out, where we had to say if we wanted to stay on or if we wanted to leave. And I was so scared of telling the people in my head. I knew I wanted to go, but I was so scared of telling the lads, because we lived in a very creative flat. There was me and two of my best mates, Alfie Neal and Jack Morgan. Alfie Neal is another incredible artist, and Jack is a phenomenal photographer, videographer. And we had a real hub there, and I felt scared for telling them that I didn't want to be there anymore, because it wasn't. I needed home. I felt like I needed to connect back to my roots again. I felt like I kind of was losing myself a little bit. And I remember Alf one day turning around to me, because me and Alf worked at the warehouse together, and was just like, "Look, where's your head at, man? You haven't been yourself. We can see that you're holding something in there." And I told him, and he was like, "Mate, that's all we needed to know.
Yeah.
We'll sort your room, but go home and get yourself together." Sorry, this is a very long story. It's a long story for it. We are getting there. And so I moved home back to Hemel Hempstead, where I live, and I guess I was very taken aback by how much had changed in that 5 years of when I was away. I thought I'd be coming back to how everything was when I was
Yeah.
18, and I came home, and a lot of my mates had sort of moved on to like London for their own lives, for that salary job and whatnot. Um, a lot of the roads are different. Like the regulars down at the local pub had changed. Like the cashier at the co-op wasn't the same as like 5 years prior. And I really started to think, was this the right move coming back home? And thank God, an incredible producer reached out to me called FJ Law. He'd heard one of my songs, Wet Shave, and we'd been messaging back and forth for a while. And we all arranged a studio session, for, I think it was early October. So I'd only been back for about 2 weeks or so. And he'd known me as a rapper originally, so he expected me to come into this session. I think he says he wasn't to this day, but I think he was. And I came in, and he was like, "Right, let's get down to it. What you got?" And I started playing him Dead End Town, and there was this look in his eye where he wasn't expecting that, but it was kind of like there was some sort of like glow to his eye, where he was like, "Cool, there's something here." And I went into him with the first verse, first pre-chorus and chorus, and I wrote the rest of the song there with him. And I think it was when you can vent that feeling that I had when I moved back. It was a real release, and I was so glad I was able to get it off my chest. And I guess, long story short, like fast forward a year, I sat on that song for a year, like all of 2022. Fast forward to the back end of 2022, and Marshall approached and were like, "Look, we really love what you're doing. We'd love to sign you." I played them Dead End Town, and that was the song that really sort of, I think, hooked them, and we're like, "Yeah, we're like, let's run with this guy." And from that point, it was that was the starting point for this EP, and everything else sort of came from that. The sort of feelings, I guess, of maturity and growing up, and understanding that things change and not being scared of that change. It all stemmed from Dead End Town, and I'm so I'm so grateful. I guess there's many things that sort of contribute to that. Is Alfie, my old flatmate, saying it's absolutely fine if you want to go home. I think it's coming home and having that realization, shit, people do move on, things do change. FJ Law, the producer, being like, no, this is sick. We don't have to do rap. I want to run with this. And it was there were like all of those things contributing that have led us to this eve where we're on the EP eve. And yeah, it was the start of this project's journey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I say the journey, the story there is amazing to hear, and I've really enjoyed listening to it. And it's fantastic. And Marshall have got a knack of cherry picking some of the best, finest like sort of young artists out there. And
Mm.
obviously, from what I can tell, absolutely an amazing label to work with. And
Mm.
yeah, obviously, Mother Told Me These Things Happen is the title of the
Mm.
EP. Obviously, it's the
Yeah.
going to come out at midnight tonight, 19th
Yeah.
of January. Obviously, listeners, it's out already, so go and
Yes.
check it out.
Go and listen to it.
Absolutely. So for those people that haven't had the opportunity to hear it yet, how would you describe the experience of that EP for them, kind of sonically, and what should they expect from it?
I like to think that sometimes I feel like you can listen to music and you can love it just for how it is and how it sounds. But I like to think that people can listen to this project and sort of in some way realize that they ain't the only one that that is scared of change. Change is a terrifying thing, man, and it's so broad because everything changes in life,
Yeah,
and you can pinpoint it onto anything. And I think I found it so daunting, and I was always scared of it. The idea of a relationship ending, somebody moving on to find somebody else, your best mates leaving your hometown, wanting to give up, missing out on a job opportunity, people passing, like it's the one I think constant in life, bar death and taxes,
yeah,
is change. And
absolutely.
I think if anything, I want people to listen to it and sort of be like, it's okay. Like just run with it. And I mean, I think that's where like the title sort of stemmed from. You can if you say, "Oh, I didn't get that job," well, these things happen. Oh, some such and such split up with me. These things happen. Oh, I got in a fight last night. These things happen. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
it was what my mum always used to say to me, and still does to this day. It's like I say, it's not something that ever stops, and I've learned a lot about myself from this whole process, from writing this project to coming up to releasing it. And I like to think that others I like to think that there'll be some people that will listen to this project at the right time in their life where they feel like they need somebody else that's going through it, and that they can listen to this record and be like, he gets it. That's how I feel. Whether it's about love, whether it's about where you're at in your life, like whether it's being realizing you're a good person, whether it's realizing you've been a bad person and you want to make amends. Um, I think I really hope to think that there's something for everybody on this project.
yeah. I mean, we've sort of touched on it throughout, really, haven't we? These tiny moments and turning points in your life, and obviously, yeah, music for me can be such a game changer. People's mental health is such a cruel mistress to try and sort of manage your mental
Mm.
health, and obviously, yeah, everyone's averse to change. It's just human nature, and
Yeah.
yeah, like you say, if someone can listen to this, and this can be one of those little moments, listening to this EP when it comes out and makes you as a listener realize, yeah, like you say, I'm not alone, and these things happen, and it's a
Mm.
common saying, isn't it? And it's one thing hearing it or saying it, and another thing completely to really understand it and take it in and
Absolutely.
accept that
Yeah.
yes, these things do happen, and I've got to get beyond that now and look to what comes next. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I mean, there's that. There's that great actors around the table where they it's like Tom Hanks and there's various massive actors, and they each get asked like if there's one thing you could tell your younger self, and it's kind
Mm.
of Tom Hanks says, "This too shall pass," and I think it's very similar. It's a very similar phrase, and I always run by that. And do you know what? I'm very glad because I was going to name the EP Weirdo, and there would have been no relevance to it whatsoever if I'd have just run with that. And thank God, one day when walking to the pub, I came up with these things. Mother told me these things happen, and I was like, oh, it could have been a completely different story at the same
Absolutely could have been. Yeah. Yeah.
time.
No, it's funny. Yeah, I think it was meant to be. It's such a powerful kind of message, and yeah, absolutely recommend that listeners obviously check it out. And something else that they
Please
have to
do.
check out is your music videos. So I'm a massive music
Mm.
video geek, and every podcast I try and find a music video preferably for the song that we've played, and there is one for Dead End Town. There's another really
Yeah,
good one for I Don't Play With Love. So obviously
yeah,
listeners can there'll be links in the bio of the podcast to go and check them out. It's such a lost art. I
mm.
always say it, that sometimes I go and look on this podcast in particular for the video for the song, and there isn't one because it gets sort of cut away.
Right,
So I'm glad that you've taken the time to make them. And obviously,
absolutely.
what was the experience like for you?
Right, so I think this music videos, and I think and is one of the real turning points where you see what a label can bring to the table alongside having a team around you, and I guess being solely able, the graph doesn't stop at all, but being able to just focus on the music on my end is amazing. But for all of my releases in the past, I've tried to do music videos even on budget. I mean, for some of my older music, like there's Better Me's got a music video, Hoodie Tied, Broke, and I mean we done those on budget. Like it was like £300,
Yeah,
and now all of a sudden it's like, right, you've got this sort of budget to play with, and it was an incredible experience. One of the things I'm extremely blessed to have is the director was my flatmate who I mentioned earlier, Jack Morgan. He shot and directed every single music video from my first one up until now, even with a label. And I think it's amazing to be able to share that experience with
yeah,
someone that's been there from the very start. He's not only a brother, but he's an incredible in his field at what he does. And to be able to share that experience with him was amazing. But yeah, I mean, even on that sense, like the days of shooting to go from me and Jack on when before I was signed, it would just be the two of us, and if we'd be trying to, our heads would be scrambled because there was so much to do. Whereas on shoot days like for Dead End Town, there was eight of us, and if we needed something last minute, somebody could run and grab something, or they could be setting up for the next scene. And I think that the ease of those, not to say they're mentally draining because and physically, because you're putting so much out there and they're long days. Um, but in comparison to it's a complete game changer, and the outcome, it's amazing to, like you say, I think with music videos you can see progression. You can see a massive amount of progression in them. Like I say, if you look at my earlier stuff, which I'm still super proud of, but to this stuff we're releasing now, it's that next step up. And I guess even it stems back to when I was doing amateur dramatics. I love to act. I love
yeah,
to be play that role, and put myself in that in that world again. And so I think it even stems back from when I was 12 years old. It was that young lad that when he was on the stage, he loved that feeling. But now I can do it, and I'm not scared to show people that side of it. I want the world to see it. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
they're such incredibly fun days. and we've got a real good team around us now. Harry Isherwood, who was on DOP, Tim that was on lighting, and so many others. There's just a great team around us now, and I like to go back and use the same people because one, I know the outcome's going to be
Yeah.
incredible, but two, on the day, I know it's going to be no hassle and there's not going to be any friction with anyone, and it's a real welcoming space.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you're not the first martial artist that I've spoken to. Yeah, it's come across to me before that one of the key things they do, with new signees in particular, is let them keep like these important people around them. They don't force
Mm,
change. No, you're with us now, so you have to use our guy. It's like, no, you got Jack. Yeah, Jack sounds
mm,
fantastic. Let's get him in. Let's use him. Let's pay him.
yeah,
And it's absolutely incredible. And yeah, like you say, the journey you've been on, and hopefully the trajectory that you are on, right now is fantastic to see. And with all of that happening, obviously, yeah, you've got these songs, you've got the videos out there, you've got the EP out
yeah,
there. Obviously, in the music industry, the next sort of big step is to get out and obviously play the songs live. And I know you've been able to
mm,
get out over the last year or so and play some good shows. Obviously, I did notice when I was obviously prepping for this. You got to play Victoria's Festival last year
yeah,
in
man,
Portsmouth, which
yeah,
is
yeah,
massive. And obviously, it's often I'm talking to us at the stage, with new music coming out where a lot hasn't been announced yet and they can't talk about it. But obviously,
mm.
I'm hoping there is going to be shows coming for listeners to pop along to.
Definitely, man. I mean, it's quite funny actually. I mean, as we talked about earlier, in the back end of last year, I mean, I actually, even around the time I was releasing Dead End Town and stuff, I went through I went through quite a difficult patch mentally. A few things happened in my life, and thank God all the music and all the videos were sort of done beforehand, before I hit this point. And I got into a very close shell with myself at the back end of last year. I think I was mistreating myself and my body because of this, and I sort of I was really mistreating myself and was anxious about going into studio sessions. I was anxious about playing live. Um, but I made a bet with myself at the start of this year that I want to better myself, and I've got a lot of drive again, and we're planning on some cool shows this year, some really cool shows. But I think one of the main things is I want to take it a step at a time myself, um, and just make sure that I'm 100% ready, because at the end of the day, I want people that are coming to see the shows to have the best time possible. And I think that is only achievable if I am 100% there, and I don't want to throw myself into something that I know I can't give 100% to. Um, so we're easing into the next week. I'm playing down in Brighton. I'm playing a little acoustic show just to ease in the year. Yeah, regain that feeling of being up on stage, and that feeling again. And then fingers crossed. Yeah, there's some cool things we're talking about that hopefully at some point she'll come down the line, but it'll
Yeah.
all be on my socials and stuff. Yeah.
And that's the segue that I'm aiming for. So at this point, I always give out the social handles because, as you say, that is the place for everyone to stay up to date. And
Yeah, man.
I always have a bit of a laugh. I always give them out. There'll be links in like the bio and all that kind of stuff anyway, and they'll flash up on the
Yeah.
screen on YouTube. But I just read them out. It's a bit of a fetish at this point because they've all got so funny because obviously most names are taken on social media. So there's
Yeah,
normally like a load of like underscores or all of these different sort of funny things that people have to put in to obviously make the names work. And
yeah,
I had a little chuckle with yours, obviously. So obviously it is your name. It's Jarki Monno
yeah.
across the different platforms, and the three big ones I normally give out because I feel I'm a bit too old for TikTok and I never remember to look it up. So you might have to help me with that one. But on Twitter and Instagram, it is Jarki Monno, but there's two eyes. There's two eyes. On
Yes.
Facebook, though, there are three eyes.
Oh, Paul, don't do this to me, man. So for some annoying reason, and I don't know why, because I've tried to make usernames with single eyes, and it says this tag is already taken, and then you go and search it up, and it
And
says
it's not
this
there.
account doesn't exist. And I'm there just like scratching my head. I'm like, can anybody get in contact with Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and just sort of, it would be so much easier. But yeah, there's a bit of hassle. Instagram is Jarki with a double I. Twitter is the same, and then on Facebook, if you type in Jarki Monno, like just with a single I, it should come up still. But yeah, it's honestly, right. It's been such a palaver, like all the years, like trying to explain it, especially after shows and like stuff when you're on stage and like I've been Jarki Monno, follow me on socials. That's with a double I, but on Spotify, oh man, it's such a pain. But yeah, fingers crossed. If it's all tagged, everybody should be able to find it all
Oh,
right.
exactly. Hopefully, it should. They just need to click a button. It's easier than typing it out, isn't it? But I'm
Absolutely.
glad you understand because I absolutely, I don't know why I ever started doing it, but I did, and then it just became a thing for me because again, like you know, especially when it's a band name as well, because so most band names are taken these days. Like so,
Yeah,
some of the band names out there are a proper stretch, and then
yeah,
like when you're factoring, it's not just bands that are going for the social handles. Of course, there could be like a hairdresser's named with that name or all this kind of stuff.
yeah,
It is so
exactly. Oh, do you know
tough.
what? I've never even thought about that. Maybe there's like a Jarky Mono like butcher out there that sells his own meats that he's stolen the tag somehow.
Oh, exactly. No, it is. Yeah, the modern world for musicians.
Yeah, yeah. Who'd have thought
Obviously,
it would be such a struggle?
exactly. Led Zeppelin never had to worry about that, did they? Come
Yeah,
on.
yeah. Trust me, trust me.
Oh, no, it's brilliant, and obviously yeah, encourage listeners to go and obviously follow you across social media. Stay up to date with everything coming. Obviously, hopefully is going to be shows, and I 100% agree
Yeah,
about getting yourself 100% before like doing them. And obviously, there's going to be more music in the future. I'm absolutely sure of that. I know there's going to be
absolutely,
an
man.
album in the future. Your career is taking off, and listeners need to yeah, you can be one of those ones, and this is one of the whole reasons we do this podcast. Is in 10 years' time, I can sort of sit there and go, yeah, I interviewed Jarky before he was famous. That's
Yeah,
why
man.
we do it. So
Absolutely.
listeners need to jump on the train. And obviously, on the live side of things, we always finish with the same segment, and it's called Setlist Science. And it might
Mhm.
not be something you've had to think about too much thus far, but obviously, we always ask it, so we're going to ask it.
Mm.
How much importance do you place into the structure of your set lists, and have you got any rules that you tend to follow?
I think set list should be like life. I think if you squeeze a life into like an into the length of a set, they should match each other. And I like to think that in a sense of mood and emotion, it should be up and down, just how life is, like a roller coaster. Um, because I guess it brings it back to how we started. This whole thing is a journey, and you want to take people on that journey with you, even if you've only got an hour to display it. Start on a high, take some lows, go back up if you need to, go back down, but always finish on a high at the end. I think have have your most passionate and connect and I think emotional song, I guess, maybe like slap bang in the middle, being able to start on a high and show an audience and a room um how far you can take it. I mean, one of my songs, Wet Shave, it's a real it is that low point emotionally in a set, but you don't want people. Well, I guess sometimes you might do want people walking away crying from your gig, but if there was a passerby outside a venue and was like, oh, someone's crying after that, you'd be a bit like, oh, I don't know, you want to see them smiling and stuff. So yeah, start on a high, take them on a journey, but always finish on a high as well. Send them walking out that door smiling and laughing.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's probably the most romantic sort of explanation of it we've had because we often hear about the energy curve, bring your audience up and down, like as you
Mm,
say. But to have you, like use that analogy of that's life. It is all up and down, and yeah, no,
mm,
absolutely amazing way to sort of close off the conversation. It's
mm.
obviously flowed that journey so well, and yeah, obviously, there's a lot coming from yourself. So obviously, listeners
Yeah.
definitely do as we said, listen to the EP, follow on social media, and come along. We always just shoot the final message across to the guests. So, what would be your final message for the listeners today?
Um, If you're going through a rough time, these things happen, but it's all going to be all right.
Perfect. Perfect way to end it. Thank you so much, Jarki, for joining us.
No, thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure, honestly. Thank you a lot, matey.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. I really hope you enjoyed that chat there with Jarki Monno. Please do make sure you check out his single Dead End Town over on our Discover New Music playlist on Spotify. And of course, stay up to date with everything coming from him by following him on social media, as you can with Full Pelt. We're on Facebook at Full Pelt and on Twitter and Instagram at Full Pelt Music. And again, finally, if you would, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, wherever you're watching or listening, because we'll be back very soon for another episode of the Discover New Music podcast.